Hello, everyone, and welcome to our post reInvent 2024 live stream, or as I just like to call it, the post invent stream. Today, we're going to get together and we're going to round up all of our highlights and some things that we thought about the major themes of reInvent. But we also want to hear from you, and we do thank you for being with us here live today. So, since this is streamed, we have the chat enabled on YouTube. So, if you want to just go ahead and let us know that you can see and hear us and where you're coming in from in the chat. That would be great. Or if there's something you're looking forward to hearing about from this year's reInvent. I'm joined today by a special guest here, who I'll let introduce themselves in just a minute. I'm Andrew Krug. I lead the security advocacy team at Datadog, but rest assured we will be talking about a variety of topics, not just security. And I'm joined today by Maya.
Hey everyone. Thank you for having me, Andrew. My name is Maya Flores. I'm a partner solutions architect at AWS on the AWS Game Day team.
Awesome. We were both on site this year at reInvent. We worked on a couple game days together. This is many reInvents for me. I know it's a few less for you, Maya, but super curious. From the time that you started attending reInvent, what was really different about this year's onsite?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this was only my second reInvent so far. I didn't go last year, but I did go the year before in 2022. I think in 2022, it was only the second reInvent post-pandemic. And so it was maybe a little more subdued. There were a lot of comments about, reInvent post-pandemic in 2019 was like this way, and now it's this way. But this year, there wasn't any of that. The energy was really great. I think it was fully back in full swing. All of our sessions were full. That everyone was really excited. So it was a really great year this year.
It did definitely feel full. The numbers are in the many tens of thousands, but the crowd control in the hallways were actually amazing this year. So it felt very full, but it didn't feel overly crowded.
Yeah, you can't get lost at reInvent.
Yeah, I was surprised at the integration of all the digital artwork over the last year or two. This year was definitely the most extreme reInvent in terms of just crazy art.
Yeah, I love the intersection of art and tech at reInvent. One that I thought was cool was the light show on the floor outside of the keynote space in the Venetian. So when you're walking into the keynote or the expo, they're projecting live images, which is a little disorienting, but also pretty.
Yeah, that and the AI enabled interactive cubes were pretty cool to play with, and a lot of people were taking videos with those. Of course, I had to snap a bunch of selfies in front of those.
Oh, I didn't get to see that, but that sounds really cool.
It was right out by the holograms. It feels like we're not even in real life sometimes. It's the AI enabled art next to the panel of holograms, which is what reInvent is all about. And we actually had one of our technical advocates collect a few interviews with attendees live on site right in front of the Datadog slide, just to give you a little peek of what it might have been like if you had been there. So let's go to Ajuna now from the advocacy team at Datadog to share some of that feedback from attendees about how things went on site.
I'm most intrigued by the announcement of Amazon Nova, a new generation of foundational models that delivers frontier intelligence and industry-leading performance for lower costs and latency for almost any Gen AI task. Another announcement that definitely caught my eye and I'm excited to start playing with is S3 buckets. So there's going to be additions to S3 buckets adding more metadata. Tagging is a core part of observability, and making it easier for extracting that information from the S3 buckets is going to make it easier in order to tag, parse, and filter the information in your buckets. Metadata is definitely a critical part of data foundations, and these foundations are not important just for data classification and for the lifecycle of the data, but also for intelligent storage tiering, which has wide sweeping effects for observability, but also security in other areas. With that, let me get some insight from folks around me and what they're most excited about at reInvent so far.
I went to Matt's keynote, and one of the things he talked about was making S3 bucket like a data lake. So introducing things like AWS S3 tables. As someone who uses S3, I can see that like a very big, step ahead on making, being able to have a central dashboard where you can, have all your data and management there.
Could you tell me a little bit more about what you're excited to hear so far?
Yes, I just want to enhance our current processes in order that we can react quickly for some incidents processes. We are looking for to improve our predictability. As well, we want to reach all the layers, all the infra and application layers to be monitored and to have correct layers, correct dashboards in order that everybody can see everything and needed information on one single dashboard, not to look and split and move on several windows in order to identify what is happening.
Yep, so far overall I've been attending Gen AI data and cloud sessions, also very excited about the announcements made yesterday at the keynotes about generative AI and data capabilities. So amazing experience so far, and thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yeah, that's so true. So many people travel like 24 hours to get there, and you talk to them and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cool that you're here and we get to talk about, we're both using the cloud. So yeah.
I'm super curious, Maya. Like, we heard from some folks on video about the things that they were most excited about. And the range of topics was pretty broad there. We even had one person that just said they were there to learn how to like really optimize performance and like traditional sort of applications. But what did you think was the most transformative announcement at this year's reInvent?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think reInvent's like really known for having like big and flashy, cool announcements. You hear about all the launches and the keynotes and stuff. But I thought what was most exciting for me this year was that you could clearly see AWS listening to its user base and prioritizing things that customers have been asking for years. As an SA, this is something that is particularly exciting for me because I can help customers with things that they've had problems with that now our launches are helping to address. A big example of this is that as part of pre-invent, we launched support for custom domain names for private endpoints in Amazon API Gateway. I'm in the serverless space. Customers have been asking for this for years, and trying to build workarounds before this was a feature was a pain. And so this one was really big and exciting for me. Other smaller like pre-invent launches for services that already exist are declarative policies for AWS organizations. That's a really cool one that will help customers. And then AWS ALB actually introduced header modification, and this allows for enhanced traffic control and security features. So for me, it's those small things that AWS launched as part of reInvent and pre-invent that shows that they're listening.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo that I think some of the most exciting announcements are the ones that don't get the keynote stage, even though there were a lot of exciting things on the keynote stage, and we're going to get to those in just a bit here. And there's actually two pre-invent announcements I'm really excited to talk about in just a bit that we haven't mentioned yet. But I have a quick question for our live audience. If you are just joining us today, with all of the new stuff that rolls out at reInvent, you have some platforms being 12 plus years old, and it's crazy to think that the AWS cloud has been around for more than a decade. So as builders, as companies like working in these environments, how are you managing the adoption of new cool features like VPC lattice and resource control policies, which we'll talk about in a bit, versus the way that you have been building to date? Are you all in infrastructure as code? Is it a long road for you to adopt some of these things? We'll kind of keep coming back to that topic if we see things bubble up in the chat as we go through, because we're super curious We'll also tell you what you should strongly consider adopting today. I won't say must, but strongly consider adopting versus, these are kind of some things that are just new and interesting, and like maybe you can build on them at leisure. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about some of the things that have been at reInvent year over year. Not every single year that reInvent has existed, but they've been there for a significant portion of the life of reInvent, and what's really fun to see live on site. The first of which is the Builders Fair, and this is like one of my personal favorite crawls every year in the expo hall. Small scale prototypes that bring together a bunch of different technologies to do something novel that inspires you to build for cloud.
That is so cool. What was your favorite demo that you saw this year?
I saw a natural language processing robot that did live translation using Bedrock.
Ooh, like what languages was it, or all languages?
All languages.
Oh
so
my gosh.
the goal of attendees was actually to stump the robot.
Do you know if they were able to do it?
There were some issues with the microphone in the loud environment, so I don't think it was like a programming issue so much as it was the expo hall can be very, very noisy at times.
Yeah, that's cool though. That's some like Star Trek level tech.
I mean, you can really kind of see in this clip here how much variety there is in the Builders Fair. And if you ever get a chance to attend reInvent, if you never have before, you got to check out this little area live on site.
No, that looks awesome.
You've also got Deep Racer, but let's talk about the Lego Town. You want to tell us a little bit about this cool Lego Town, Maya?
Yeah, so this is a Lego town. It was on the expo floor, and it simulates a real town with one exception. Its power grid is monitored and maintained by Amazon Bedrock. So Bedrock is handling information like energy generation, load balancing, demand response for each part of this town to ensure that, the hospital continues to have power, the houses have power, and the train can continue to run. So I think it's a really interesting case study in how we can use models to figure out if, new innovative technologies can help us in real world scenarios.
Yeah, I think this is something that we're definitely going to see more of, is this combination of observability metrics, AI for decision making, to really empower people to do some things with systems like energy that we've never seen this kind of mashup of data and non-human control.
Yeah, it is interesting. And as our systems get more complex, like our energy grid with different types of renewables, I think that AI can really be helpful there in the future.
Yeah, it's very important. And it's also important to build these things as small scale prototypes.
Yeah, test them out before we do in real life.
You don't want to just agile an entire town. But let's talk about some of the launches now. So obviously we had a lot of co-launches at reInvent, AWS and Datadog. We had 16 launches across all integrations and then net new products or net new features for products. So I just want to call out that blog here, which we have the link to on screen. And hopefully we'll have the link in the chat for that here shortly. But we had a lot of strong integrations. Some of these we're going to talk about a little later on in the show. There are some really, really exciting announcements here. And then we had some product features roll out across the Datadog product family or brand new products. And that is also what we'll talk about when we kind of get into the major themes of reInvent. And if you follow the Datadog blog, you might have seen this blog that we roll out once a year on the Thursday of reInvent. Usually this gets written and it's generally published by the Monday afterwards. So this is kind of a walkthrough of all of the announcements with links out to the AWS blogs and things. So if you weren't on site and you want to catch up a little more even after the stream, we have this blog available as well. So we try to break down in this the four major themes, or the things that we think were kind of through everything at reInvent. And obviously one of those that we saw a lot is generative AI. No surprises there. Operational excellence is a second theme. So how are people continuing to optimize, make sure that their apps are performant, etc. Security and identity And then cloud cost was a really major theme through everything that we saw on site. So like cloud cost wasn't a track all by itself, but a lot of the core announcements from reInvent contribute really substantially to the reduction of cost. And then I think the fifth unspoken theme was actually engineering cultures. So this was kind of a surprise to me to see how much culture content there was. It was largely just been a technical and innovation conference.
Yeah, I think that was a big differentiator for me this year too. Usually reInvent is just about, getting hands-on with AWS or all about the launches, but this year is about, how are customers building and cultivating cloud engineering culture, which was a really interesting topic of conversation to see at several sessions.
Yeah. We'll dive more into culture in the security section a little bit, because there's a great security talk that we want to highlight. But let's talk about Gen AI, probably one of the most prominent themes of reInvent. No surprise that it was front and center stage there. But let's talk about the big announcement there, or at least my favorite announcement, which was the new family, AWS Nova. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this one is so exciting. AWS launched Amazon Nova, which is essentially a family of new foundational models. There are 6 of them, each designed for specific usage. There are 4 understanding models, which we typically think of, they will generate text, and then 2 content generation models that generate photo and video. But what makes Nova really exciting is that they are incredibly fast. They have been designed so they're really easy to use and integrate with your existing data and systems. They support a wide range of tasks. And the big one, they are about 75% cheaper than similar models. So they really have a really impressive price for performance for foundational models. And like you said, they're really kind of democratizing model access and making it more accessible to different people and companies.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge theme as we move forward with AI stuff, not just on the Nova side, but in how you're observing the prompts and almost kind of scoring them to see what back end is not just going to be the most cost effective, but also what's going to be the best at actually acting on that prompt.
Yeah, performance is very different for generative AI than it is for typical applications that we're used to monitoring and building. So I think this will be definitely something to pay attention to going forward.
And definitely, if you haven't checked out the Datadog LLM observability stuff, we actually had a tiny booth aside on the expo hall floor where you can check out all those like latest innovations around monitoring, performance, and security in LLMs, and that's obviously a really hot topic right now. So I'm excited that's something that we're working on. We also had the announcement about Trainium and Inferentia, which were really cool, and I think that those announcements are one, totally great names. but 2, like these, they solve a real problem that folks have. So you want to just kind of summarize those launches as well?
Yeah, totally. So Nova is for Amazon foundational models, but if you want to kind of develop and train your own LLMs, we have AWS Trainium EC2 instances that are now available on the AWS console that are purpose-built for high-performance deep learning. They are built on AWS chips that were built with Gen AI and LLMs in mind. What's really cool about the Trainium EC2 instances, like with Nova, is that they have an incredible price performance. So they have about 30 to 40% better price performance than previous generation GPU-based EC2 instances. So again, we're kind of democratizing the ability for people to start training their own models. In addition to just having the EC2 instances too, we also launched something called a Trainium 2 Ultra server, which is like a crazy name again. But this is essentially connecting together 4 Trainium EC2 instances so that you can really scale up your Gen AI workloads to meet demand if necessary.
Very, very cool. And we monitor those new instance types at launch as well. That was one of the the quieter announcements on that page of 16 announcements. So if you're interested in Trainium and Inferentia, you might just check out that launch announcement from Datadog. So really excited too about the launch of Q in the AWS console. And I'm not sure that everybody here is totally familiar with what is Q. So you want to just give us a little orientation?
Yeah, so Amazon Q is AWS's kind of chatbot assistant. Q is available anywhere you are. It is in the AWS console, so you can ask it questions in the AWS console. You can ask it, what database engines does RDS support, and it will answer that. You can also ask it questions in the console about your AWS infrastructure. So you can ask it, list all my EC2 instances, and it will list your EC2 instances. So that's great, but it also is available in your IDE. So you can integrate it with your IDE, and then while you're coding, you can ask it questions about, AWS SDK, or you can ask it to look at a really long CloudFormation file and ask it to tell you about it. So really it is kind of your AWS assistant, which is really great. And it's also integrated with Datadog. So you can ask it questions about Datadog.
I think this is going to also be a big trend as we prompt all the things. I often wonder if some of these more very complex interfaces will just become the single box that you just type in your goal.
Yeah, instead of having to navigate the AWS console and find exactly what you're looking for, you can kind of just maybe one day talk to Q and Q will do it for you. Not yet, but maybe.
More prompts in all the things.
Yeah.
We also had some interesting work around data foundation for generative AI, and a lot of these were around S3. And if you are training your own models or fine-tuning models, you're very conscious of the fact that your data dictates how accurate that fine-tuned model is going to be. So that's where these two new features are really, really exciting, because they help observability of what's going on in S3, not just at the bucket level, but all the way down to individual files. And we'll kind of dive deep on that more in the security section. But also for us, AI observability is top of mind, because obviously we build an LLM observability product, but we have this marriage now of the notion of performance and safety and security in these models. And the ethical use of those is really, really top of mind, I think, for most folks as well. And one of the companies that is doing a great job of tackling that is ArcXP, which is a subsidiary of the Washington Post. And staff advocate Jason Yee caught up with their CTO, Joe Crooney, on site to talk about how specifically they built a custom system to ensure that their models weren't hallucinating, but also were generating data that was ethical in nature.
Yeah, this was a really great session. I really enjoyed catching up on it. I think as a consumer, I hear companies integrating with Gen AI, and when it's companies like the Washington Post, I'm always like, well, how is it? How are they making sure that it's ethical? And they really walked through every step of it here, how we can't build Gen AI applications without a baseline for what ethical means in the context. They kind of defined how they went through the process of figuring out what ethical meant for them. And then two, we can't build ethical Gen AI applications without the right tools to check and monitor that they are in fact meeting these baselines that we've set up. And so the session was great for seeing how ArcXP and Datadog kind of work together on that one.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. And I always want to applaud people that get on stage and share something like this totally openly that they put so much time into. They could probably patent it and profit from it. So this was just a really great session to see how thoughtfully they've broken this problem apart. Obviously, if you have questions on any of this stuff, if you're just joining us live, we are monitoring the chat. So please feel free to surface your questions, comments, things that you're excited about in that YouTube chat. And we will interact with you live during the session, or take longer questions at the end. So the next area that we're going to discuss is operational excellence. So this is kind of a quieter area oftentimes because people are just, kind of running in cloud. And I think sometimes we take that for granted, that things just kind of go. But also with the cost optimization theme, and resilience is a big part of the way that we're now required almost to build everything today. There were a lot of really exciting announcements on the pure operational side. So like the first of which that I'm going to talk about is the EKS auto mode. And I think that's a really exciting announcement, because really, if you just think back even 5 years ago when Kubernetes was in its early days, putting up a Kubernetes cluster would take you a long time. There were a lot of, automated bootstraps out there that would kind of help you with it, but really it was a pretty big ordeal. And then I used to have an expression, Kubernetes is fine as long as you want to hire 8 people to take care of it. And as we've kind of evolved, EKS, which is AWS's managed Kubernetes offering, has really made that super easy to just turn on Kubernetes clusters in any region that you want to and scale out. But the auto mode announcement actually allows you to scale up and scale down, more importantly, using a variety of different metrics.
Yeah, auto mode is really exciting. I think this will be very widely used. Not only does it help you with scaling, but it also helps you with choosing the EC2 instances that are supporting your cluster automatically. So you can optimize that way as well, which takes a lot of the, I guess, individual thought out of it.
Yeah. The next big theme, I think, that was prevalent across a ton of things was multi-region everything. So most folks that are building on AWS, they don't necessarily always think about multi-region. Like we've traditionally built towards multi-availability zone to create resilience inside of a single geography. But now with all the different compliance regulations and things, we're actually keeping data really, really close to the people that are using those systems. And so as kind of a side effect of that, now we have multi-region resilience in like different areas of the globe. And I think that that's really pushed the envelope as to which services have to be available in every region.
Yeah, more and more services are being enabled in more and more new regions. I think some services that got new region additions this year were Private Link, MemoryDB. There's new multi-region strong consistency for DynamoDB. And then the launch of Amazon Aurora DSQL, or distributed SQL, which is an in-preview service, allows you to build more resilient multi-region configurations as well.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, and it's very cool to see that all made accessible to anyone that's building at any level without enormous teams like kind of backing those efforts, because building anything resilient used to be really hard. Like in the data center days, we had clusters, and then we moved to cloud. Like engineering for multi-availability zone is very difficult. Engineering for multi-region is incredibly difficult, especially if you talk about, replication of state, failover management. How do you do the basic things like networking and DNS routing? So nice to see the strong investment there.
Yeah, definitely.
We also had an announcement about our Lambda observability product. And I just want to mention this here because the serverless scene was really, really quiet this year. And I think that is largely due to the fact that like serverless just works. And a lot of people are building on top of serverless, and it doesn't really need a ton of new features year over year to continue just being this really strong pillar of the way that people are building in the AWS cloud. But we have an observability product that actually works as a Lambda extension. And if you're not familiar with Lambda extensions enable you to effectively hot load and mount additional code in the application runtime as it spins up. So you can imagine that if you get that wrong, the penalty on startup can be quite long. So we're actually very, very performance driven, and obsessed with making sure that observing your Lambda functions doesn't really take a performance hit. So we released the next generation of our Lambda observability extension, and it is incredibly performant.
How performant? Like how fast is it?
I think that is is in the launch announcement here, but I want to say that it was at least twice as fast. They rebuilt it in Rust, so it went from 450 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds. So I was actually understating how much more performant it is. So
like
that's
9 times.
That's a huge difference in the cold start penalty. So kudos to the team for getting that out. And obviously, if you are monitoring serverless in your environment, you need some way to make sure that it's working properly, because that's one of the most challenging things I think about these ephemeral environments, is because they get thrown away at the end of execution, it can be very difficult to diagnose problems.
Yeah, and because they're so distributed, it's hard to kind of trace one request throughout the entire system. So having good monitoring for serverless is so important.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is we're also seeing consolidations of customers that are building hybrid environments across serverless and containers, and almost kind of like treating those things the same. We had one of our great customers, Cambia Health, on site as well, talking about just how they think about observing their Kubernetes clusters at scale. And obviously, as a healthcare company, security is a core pillar of the way that they think about building, scaling out, and ensuring integrity and availability for the services that they're making.
Yeah, this was another great talk. This one is a little shorter, actually, so I definitely recommend giving it a quick watch. But Kyle basically just walks through the entire process of how his company migrated from 100% ECS to 100% EKS. He walks through kind of like the design, the thought process, all of it. So it was a really great watch.
Yeah, going back to our conversation from earlier of like, how do you choose what you're going to build on as people are rolling out cool new things versus the tried and true that maybe has a little bit more technical debt. I really want to applaud this presentation, because he talks a lot in this about how they decided like, hey, we're in the middle of a migration, so we're going to try out all the cool new stuff because we can.
Yeah, I think they start using like Amazon Bottle Rocket instead of Amazon Linux too, because they're like, well, might as well try it out while we're like trying out a new kind of entire platform, which is really awesome. And a few times he also mentions like, oh, we didn't know about EKS auto mode when we were building this out, but it was launched like literally this morning, so we're going to check it out, which is just like really cool to hear.
Yeah, I think that they didn't know about EKS auto mode because it was kind of a secret until launch day. But
yes, that's what I meant. I wasn't calling them out.
Yeah, it's always great when somebody gets immediate value from attending and speaking at reInvent.
Definitely.
We will now transition to the security and identity section. And so we actually did something a little out of the ordinary this year at reInvent, which I want to talk about first and foremost, which is that we released our supply chain firewall project at reInvent. If you haven't checked out that session, I was on stage with Zach Allen, our senior director of security research, talking about that project. It's this session is one of my favorite sessions I've ever worked on at reInvent, because we're able to talk about how at Datadog we catch threat actors from nation states like DPRK trying to poison the software supply chain with malware in the big repositories like PyPy and NPM. And this was a crazy talk to build and deliver, because you could really kind of see the light bulb moment in the on the faces of the audience members, like kind of connecting the dots to why supply chain security is so important.
Yeah, I didn't get to attend this in person, but I did watch it after the fact, and I, behind my laptop screen, had that light bulb moment on my own, where you really think about like supply chain security is important for all of us, especially developers. If we are, developing on our own laptops, we're pulling packages down. If they have kind of like a backdoor or a threat or something, we could be impacted. I think you mentioned that there was like a Solana hack that came out like the morning you were delivering the session that affected some developers who had crypto wallets on their personal machines. So that was really immediately like impacted, or I thought of the impact.
Yeah, we actually have profiles for all of the different types of malware, like for the ones that are going after cryptocurrency, because it turns out if you're edgy and you like technology, you probably like crypto. But Also, they're stealers for things like long-lived AWS access key pairs or API keys for your LLM. So tons of risk there that you can drive down by just creating more sensors and making that supply chain effort more observable. So that project is called the Supply Chain Firewall. It has a very straightforward name, but it's part of a project that we do at Datadog called the Guard Dog Project. We also had our inaugural CISO breakfast, where we caught up with a ton of security leaders to play a game day and talk with Chris Betts, the CISO of AWS, on some themes and key pieces of advice for that audience. I think the big takeaway there actually was almost a teaser / preview of the day 3 keynote, because Chris kind of left us with this statement that simple systems are secure systems, and building simply is just going to help you inherently bake more security in.
Yeah, this was an awesome event. I was there, you were there. It was great to see kind of the turnout. It was an absolutely packed house. And so not only was there kind of the conversation between Chris Betts and Emilio Escobar about, how they envision security at both Datadog and AWS and how they ensure a culture of security, which was a big theme as we talked about. We also had an AWS game day for all of the kind of CISOs in attendance. And so they got the chance to get hands-on with both AWS and with the Datadog features. So for those who are unfamiliar, AWS Game Day is a hands-on learning format that challenges participants to use AWS services in the console, as well as partner services in the partner consoles to solve real-world technical challenges. So at the breakfast, we had this great talk with Chris and Emilio, and then they got to immediately get hands-on and kind of apply those things that we talked about, which was cool.
We do love the game day because it might be the first time somebody gets to experiment with new services, and I think it's really, really cool to play through that story from different personas, because it might not be the persona that you work with in your cloud environment.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and we provide the AWS account, so it's like totally risk-free. You can break stuff, you can work with services you've never worked with before. It's just a really fun opportunity.
Yeah, the other thing I was really excited about kind of leading up into reInvent was actually the pre-invent announcements that we kind of teased there in the beginning of the stream, and the big ones there were.
Is this for me? Or?
Go ahead. I wasn't prompting you. I actually just accidentally scrolled to the wrong point in my doc.
Sorry, I was like, a quiz.
No worries. The pre-invent announcements are all the way at the top here. And the big ones that I was really excited about was Assume Root API and resource control policies. So you want to take resource control policies and I'll take Assume Root?
Sure. Let's do it. Yeah, so resource control policies, or RCPs, essentially, if you use AWS organizations, they allow you to establish a data perimeter across your entire AWS environment. So you can restrict access to specific AWS resources. I think the resources that are available now are like S3, STS, S3, Simple Token Service, STS, KMS, Key Management Service, and then SQS, Simple Queue Service, and Secrets Manager. That was a lot of acronyms all at once, but essentially it allows you to manage permissions from principals from all over, regardless of where they come. So you can manage permissions from principals outside of your account, as well as principals from within your organization. So it just gives you another option for securing your AWS environment, in addition to the options that we already have with SCPs.
Yeah, I think this is a game changer because people talk a lot about the resource policy system in AWS as kind of a negative thing. But the way I frame this for people is that this is a guardrail for things that are designed to be public if you want them to be public. It is a feature that you can use these services to create open, anonymously accessible content.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like with S3.
Yeah, so it builds on that theme that we're seeing, where we can have these things be true, but then we can also have these really restrictive guardrails like SCPs at the organization level that describe the things that we never want to have happen inside of certain environments.
Yeah, they really go hand in hand.
Yep. And then the next big announcements, which I'm sure was a pile of work, because this is the first time I think that between these two things, that the access decision facility in AWS got a change to its flow chart. And RCPs were a big part of that, but the second half was the Assume Root API, which one of our staff security researchers, Nick Frechette, actually discovered while he was kind of exploring the console using some security tooling that we developed internally. This summer, we saw this API verb start to pop up in a lot of places. If you're curious how we did that, that talk is linked in the blog. But we hoped really hard that what this was is the elimination of the need to sign in using a username and password to do things that the most powerful user, the root user in the account, can do.
Yeah, no, this is a big one. Even as we are trying to restrict the things that you are required to use the root user for, restricting access and ensuring that you can use the root user with temporary credentials that expire is a really big win for security here.
Yep, temporary credentials, all the things, and we really hope that folks are continuing to implement those best practices, eliminate long-lived key pairs, continue adopt to AWS Identity Center. Identity Center is increasingly mature and has more and more features. I think almost every quarter I see either a bug fix or an act on a customer request. So really, really cool to see the maturity there. And the last thing that we want to talk about in this section is the security culture at AWS session. So this was introducing some of the fundamental pillars. And we've actually never seen AWS talk about some of these things externally on stages. So I was really, really excited to see just the level of transparency here in this. The folks on screen here in SEC 217, which we have linked, shared a little bit about the Security Guardians program at AWS, which is also something that we haven't heard talked about much externally, a little bit here and there at events like Reinforce. But Maya, can you tell us a little bit about the Guardians program?
Yeah, totally. So security guardians are Amazonians that are champions of security within their own service team. So they are kind of responsible for providing security guidance to their service team throughout the entire SDLC process in order to help their team make informed security decisions that lead to more secure and more on-time launches. At AWS, we have a little phrase called ship secure. So we want to make sure that we are shipping applications and services, that we aren't, belaboring the security process. But we want to make sure that we are, ensuring security at all points. So yeah, it was cool to hear this shared widely.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was really interesting for me was to hear about how AWS creates a culture around escalations to like a manager's manager, like a VP, not being viewed as a negative.
Yeah, it's celebrated. It's like a big positive. So if an engineer finds a security problem and they bring the issue up, we celebrate it. An email gets sent to their VP and their VP reaches out to them and gives them kudos. Essentially, we just feel that it's better if these things are found early internally than if a customer finds it after we ship it and then it turns into a huge problem. So I think that culture is really important too.
Yeah. Plus that one. Of course, if you want to stay up to date on all the things that are going on in cloud security, not just inside of Datadog, but outside of Datadog, you can also subscribe to our Datadog Security Labs newsletter, which we quietly launched in the months coming before reInvent, but that's available to subscribe to at the link on screen right at the bottom there. So please do sign up for our security newsletter. That closed out the security session. I did promise that this would not be a security webinar, but just so much exciting security to talk about, and we could spend an entire hour on just that topic, I'm sure. The fourth major theme that was represented across everything reInvent was cloud cost. And again, we're super, super excited to see folks optimizing cost across every domain in cloud. So this used to just be an exercise where you would read the bill, maybe you're in a enterprise business plan, a compute savings plan, reserved instances, but people are really getting creative in the way that they are visualizing cost for their engineering teams and then dynamically managing that cost. So Trainium and Nova were obviously both huge announcements that are going to be game changers for folks in cutting their bills in half or more. But also on costs, the next generation of SageMaker came out.
Yeah, we're calling it SageMaker AI. So this is the new SageMaker. It is essentially a fully managed infrastructure, tools, workflows, anything you need to kind of be working with AI in the cloud. What makes the new version of SageMaker AI exciting and cost effective is that it offers at least a 54% lower cost of ownership than if you were to kind of build this out by yourself or used another cloud-based self-managed system for building, training, and deploying ML models. So another big AI cost win here.
Yeah, and then we had the model selection inside of Bedrock also as kind of a quiet announcement.
Yeah, so Bedrock, one of the great things about Bedrock is that it gives you access to so many different models. I think there's over 160 from all different publishers like Meta, Anthropic, Amazon, of course, but also Cohere, Hugging Face. There's a ton of them. But you can now kind of choose a model based on what's going to work best for you, based on kind of output, accuracy, all these different kind of areas. So it's a great option as well.
Yeah, and we had a session on cloud cost as well. Datadog makes a cloud cost management product that can observe all the things related to cost and surface those in a transparent dashboard. So this session was from Ajuna, who you saw earlier in the stream, and DJ Cruz talking about how we were able to use our own CCM product to save a ton of money, many millions of dollars, which we also have a blog about on the Datadog blog. But also, one of the neat things that they talked about as well is how we were able to evaluate the data that we were seeing and then make a really conscious choice to move a ton of our workloads to Graviton.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. And that's really cool that was like the majority of what you did and you saved so much money. I think that's like a testament to Graviton, which is a specific type of EC2 instance. It is a 64-bit ARM-based CPU instance. It's designed by AWS and it's an alternative to traditional like x86 CPUs. They have a lower energy use relative to the traditional x86 CPUs. So not only are they, better for your wallet, they're also better for the environment. So when thinking about optimizing for cost, you can also think about optimizing for energy usage and stuff like that. So definitely check out Graviton instances if you haven't.
Yeah, and this is an area where observability as you're doing this is not optional. So observability used to be really important as you were cost optimizing because, maybe you're taking a workload in the same processor family and you're just kind of right sizing it. And then you want to see where that's introducing latency or weights. And that's like a really basic use case. But when you're moving things across processor architectures, it's really, really critical to see what parts of the code base actually need to change to accommodate that.
Yeah, definitely. I think having good observability into your system on the cloud is fundamental to cost optimization. It's really hard to visualize, especially with like large complex applications, what your footprint is in the cloud and figuring out what to optimize. It is impossible without good observability. So I think that's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're actually going to wrap up here shortly, but if you have time, or we have time to take questions. If any of y'all that are in the live chat have questions for myself or Maya, please feel free to get those in the live chat, or even just comments on what you thought was interesting. we'll give that just a second here as we do the outros. So we have a few links that we'd like to share with you on screen. And that's that Datadog product roundup that we showed with those 16 announcements. That's a tile on the left here. Obviously, you can sign up for a free trial of Datadog. If you have not tried Datadog before, give it a go. If you have questions for us, technology partners at datadoghq.com. There are also a variety of ways to reach out to me if you have any questions or follow-ups after the webinar, LinkedIn, Datadog community, Slack, etc. Any final thoughts that you want to share for the audience on your reInvent experience, Maya?
Yeah, I reInvent was amazing this year. I think I had an incredible experience. I think it's really just fun to get to meet people in person, not just from AWS that I don't know, but also from, partner companies like Datadog, get to talk to them, get to talk about the new launches. So yeah, if you didn't get to attend reInvent this year, you can of course catch up with the keynotes online like I have been doing all of this week, because as an AWS employee, I didn't get the chance to do it in person. But yeah, I think it was a really great year this year.
Yeah, I would just echo that. It's always a blast. This year was just like a really great year to be on site. And if you've never been, I think if you're a cloud practitioner, attending a conference like AWS reInvent or Dash, where you're just standing in this sea of people who are building on the same platform that you're building on. It's not just a great networking opportunity and a learning opportunity, but it's just inspiring. And that's one of the reasons why I love to go.
Yeah, totally. And there's also like great hands-on opportunities. Like we talked about the game days where you can, really get hands-on with AWS services, but there's also different workshops where you can have more guided traditional learning experiences. It's just a great opportunity to kind of be immersed in tech.
Yep. Well, with that, I want to thank everybody who has joined us on the live stream today. I know it's a busy time of the year, and you have lots of stuff that you could be doing with your hour. So thanks for spending it with myself and Maya, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.